moving on and like going off of those 3 draft picks that the Cavs made. I know we touched base on the Bynum signing in our discussion of the Cavaliers draft picks. We talked about Jarrett Jack a little bit on how he's going to be able to play both the 1 and the 2 and be a viable backup point guard to Kyrie Irving. Even though at the time of the draft we kind of wanted to take a backup. In that way in the offseason. And then we have Earl Clark, who, like you said, we're not, he could play the 3 or the 4, but it's, his shooting's a problem.
Yeah.
Definitely. And we'll see if he can, be the starting 3 to begin the season. But, with that said, the Cavs had their most active offseason in
recent. I mean,
forever maybe.
Yeah.
Especially with having draft picks finally.
Right. Yeah. I think it's safe to say that at least since we can remember. I mean, this has definitely been the most active, and also
especially in more so in free agency because we've had the draft picks these last 3 years, but
right.
I mean free agent we've spent very very minimal.
Right, and on guys that we had signed, The most active one I can think of was when they got Larry Hughes and Daniel Marshall and stuff, and I would much rather take what they did this year over those 2. So yeah, definitely the Cavs, it tested the free agent waters, and hopefully a sign to come going forward in future years. And the only team that really didn't see a shift in their roster out of the Central Division are the Chicago Bulls, who they are getting back Derrick Rose, and they do have, a great core already, so there wasn't really a need to... Right, to go out and spend a lot. And
they got, a great shooter, Eric Murphy out of Florida, Tony Snell, who's who's gonna be able to be a 2-guard on this team, on a team that really,
it didn't
struggled.
Didn't have Rip Hamilton,
but he's gone, and, that was really, a gray area last season. But, I mean... Other than, the Bucks, who I think they might be, the new bottom dweller of the Central Division, after losing both Monta Ellis and Brandon Jennings, even though, those 2 players really didn't fit that well together because, they're high-volume shooters,
right.
Especially Ellis. And, Jennings really isn't that great around the rim, but... having that shift go to Detroit, who also picked up Josh Smith, who is great around the rim, but not so great from the outside.
Right.
Where, I mean, the Pistons were, an excellent team, in the paint last season, having, guys like Greg Monroe and Andre Drummond, but they weren't that great from outside. So, I mean, having a 3-point threat like Jennings, and if things click, Detroit and the Cleveland could,
be surprises.
Could be surprises and could potentially both be playoff teams.
Right.
Especially looking at their rosters now. But I mean, there's a lot that can implode. For the Pistons, it's up to Smith and Jennings to if they're going to be able to be a cohesive unit together. And for the Cavs, it's a matter of are they going to be healthy?
Yeah, definitely. Now, I love what Detroit did. Actually, I think. It was a shift and something that you didn't think that they would do. You know what I mean? When you got Josh Smith, you're like, all right, because before they were like, all right, we're going to try and rebuild through the draft. They took Monroe, they took Drummond, they took Brandon Knight. So that's sort of, they're like, all right, we'll rebuild through the draft. And then when they went out and signed Josh Smith and then traded away Brandon Knight, you really, knew that they had confidence in what they were doing. You know what I mean? They wouldn't have traded Brandon Knight if they didn't think they could win right away. You know what I mean? So I love that they're doing. I'm not saying that I hope it pans out, but the fans of Detroit deserve, to have some good basketball back there again. So, for all sake, I hope that the moves Detroit made do work out in their favor and help them, become a little bit more of a competitive basketball team. And then touching on Milwaukee, like you said, honestly, it was probably best that they lost both those 2 players because they were just a mess together. They made some moves, but. I don't like O.J. Mayo too much as a player. Their draft pick, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name, the small forward out of Greece. A lot of question marks about him. So, it's going to be a mess, I believe, in Milwaukee, but I definitely think they'll be the cellar dweller, spend some time in the basement.
Yeah, I think Jerry Nason, one of our RD writers, I think he pointed out, is a lot of Milwaukee fans are gonna, be carrying around programs with them because this roster, looks pretty different, and I mean, poor Larry Sanders, right?
Yeah, right, because he just is starting to butt into a very serviceable, above average player in the NBA, and then sort of our entire roster imploded.
But I mean, the Pistons and the Cavs, yes, they did make a lot of moves, but I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you my rankings of who I thought did the best in the Central Division. I'm going to put the Indiana Pacers at number 1 because, I mean, this team who, is going to be, returning a healthy Danny Granger, beefed up their bench with guys like Louis Scola, Chris Copeland, C.J. Watson, even Donald Sloan,
right.
and signing, locking down David West. I mean, this team got a lot better from when they already were being, the second best team, in the Eastern Conference, and I mean that's really scary for the Miami Heat, especially if how deep this bench is now, even after losing guys like Tyler Hansbrough.
Right.
But I'd say that's why I put the Pacers at 1. I'm going to go ahead and put the Cavs at 2 because I think they have, a less likely chance of imploding as, the Pistons do. I'm still concerned about the Pistons' ability to convert from, outside the paint. They just can't be, that one-dimensional team
right.
Inside, despite with all that talent that's there. It's, like I said, it's going to be up to whether Jennings and Smith are going to be able to, exist in the same lineup and effectively. So that I'm going to put the Pistons at 3 as far as off-season moves go.
Right.
This isn't where.
This is not where they're going to finish.
Because I think the Bulls still. I mean,
still,
the Bulls and Pacers those are going to be fun games to watch. I'm going to put the safety that the Bulls had at 4, just because like I said, that they had their core intact already. Like they really didn't need to do, that much to change their team in the offseason. But Milwaukee, I just think a team that was around six games under 500 made the playoffs last season. I think with the changing of the guards in teams like the Wizards, the Pistons, and the Cavs, I think, and seeing what happened to the Bucks and the Celtics, I think we're going to see a change of the bottom of the Eastern Conference of playoff teams, definitely, and that's why I put the Bucks at 5.
And my rankings here very similar. Definitely the Pacers at 1 because although the moves that they made were sort of like re-signing players and stuff like that, and getting Danny Granger back, but like you said, Louis Scola was a great pickup for them as a team. So I think Indiana definitely 1. Cavs 2 again, just because there's not a high chance for them those moves to implode. Jack's a very, very safe signing. The only real question mark would be Bynum. But then, Pistons, they're super close with the Cavs. I was really considering putting Detroit at number 2 just because I really liked how they were active. That was part of the reason why I really liked their offseason. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to work once they get on the court, but they at least made an attempt to get better. So I love what Detroit did this year. I'm going to put the Bucks ahead of the Bulls just because the Bulls did stay pat. But I don't even though I was just dissing the Bucks a few minutes ago, I think maybe long term they got better because they did get rid of the jumbled mess in the backcourt with Ellis and Jennings, and I think Mayo can sort of hang around, but Larry Sanders and stuff like that will still be there. So I'll put the Bucks at 4 just because I think that they sort of cleared out their roster for right away and are going to eventually get better. Sort of like how what the Celtics did, like for rebuilding. Mm-hmm. That's what I think they did. I think they put themselves in a real good position for next offseason. So I'll put the Bucks at 4, and then I'll throw the Bulls in there at 5 just because they remained, they didn't really do anything much. But I still think they're going to be a great team, and Derrick Rose is going to come back. I have no question that he'll be back at full strength. So they're still, I would probably put them at 1 or 2 in the division. When it's all said and done next year, but just based primarily on off season, they didn't really do anything.
Fair enough. I definitely agree with that sentiment.